Walter Wanderings Travel Podcast. This is another edition of The Big Show. And we'll have our guest in just a second, but I want to let you know that the promotion that I'm doing with my special guest today is simply this. If you mention any of the television shows that this man has been involved with, then I'll give you $50 off your qualifying vacation of 4 nights or more. It doesn't matter the destination because the destination is all part of the journey. So that's how that works. So mention a show that this guy's been involved with, and we'll get you $50 off a vacation. How does that sound? It sounds great because it's my deal. So let me introduce our guest today. I found him on LinkedIn with really, really good inventive content. And then I found out that he actually has provided inventive content that I watch religiously on television, including the shows known as Chopped, America Says, and Winsanity, among several others. His shows have been seen all across the world. And it's really fascinating to maybe dive into that a little bit. But there's also a travel component here, too. And I know he'll be talking about that. So without any further ado, I bring in the esteemed executive producer of Chopped and other stuff, Dave Noll. Dave, thank you for hopping on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That was a very nice introduction.
All right. I'll try to give you a transcript of that later, okay?
If you could engrave it and send it to my mom directly, that would be
it's always about mom. We all know that. It is.
Isn't it?
Now, first of all, I have to ask you, you're not related at all to Chuck Noll, the Pittsburgh Steelers coach, are you?
I am not, although I do enjoy watching the Pittsburgh Steelers from time to time.
Well, I do. I'm a Steeler fan. I actually had season tickets back when they played at Pitt Stadium when they went 1-13. And my father decided to move to New York in 1974, and that's when they won their first Super Bowl. So I got over that, though, around 1986. That's the way it goes. So, Dave, you come up with these inventive and creative ideas for television shows, and they're mostly competition game show type things, which is actually very cool because when the original thought must be really something. And I guess I want to talk about how do you come up with the original thought for something like Chopped and something that's sort of completely opposite like America Says?
We create all the time. So there's a woman that I work with, Cleve Keller, and the way I describe it is she is like a fireworks display of ideas. If you say to Cleve, hey, so-and-so, this particular buyer, Disney Plus is looking for a game show and the target audience is families with kids or whatever. And they really want it to be, they really want to focus on their Pixar characters. Let's just say Cleve would come up with, 80 ideas, 90 ideas, like a fireworks display, like a popcorn popper. And I do things that are different. I look at all of our old shows. I look at existing hit shows. I'm constantly dissecting shows, deconstructing shows. And then we develop constantly. We're almost always texting each other, calling each other, emailing each other, saying, what about this? What about this? What about this? We are what about this people? And, most of the time the ideas aren't great. Cleve's ideas are often great. Or they don't go anywhere, but then sometimes one of us will say something, we'll hear a story from somebody else. I was talking to my grandmother the other day and she told a story, and that may or may not turn into a show that we're going to pitch in January. You just never know. But the real answer is to work hard and do a lot of it.
I guess so. It's not dissimilar to being a travel advisor because I'm working hard. I'm pitching different things. I'm putting out content.
We're all selling. We're all selling, Scott. You got to sell.
That's it. It's true. We no matter what profession you're in, you're selling something, even if it's selling yourself. There's a certain wisdom to that, and I've had several dozen jobs in my life. So I know that each time, I've had to go in and sell myself, and I was able to sell myself enough to get a particular job. And, some jobs I was better at than others. And just because whatever it was. Was it because I knew the technical language? Was it because I, was able to connect with the people I was working with or working for? I don't know. I mean, it's somewhat of a mystery, but it's always a good
I'll tell
challenge.
you this: early on, I've always been a huge Disney fan because my grandparents lived in Florida, and my grandfather, who I was named after, would take me to Disney World, and so I have always been a Disney fan. And early on, I was reading about Disney, Walt, and the amazing things that he did in order to create this company and create all of these stories and all of these characters that we all know and love. And one of the things that they said was Walt never forgot in any conversation, no matter who he was talking to, no matter who he was discussing the latest movie or the latest theme park with, or the latest television show or whatever it was, he never forgot that he was a salesman as well. So he was a storyteller, he was a director, he was a multi-Oscar winner, an enormous success story, but he never forgot that you can create whatever you want, but you have to figure out a way to sell it. Whether it's to a buyer, whether it's to a network, whether it's to a bank, or whether it's to the audience. And so that freed me up. Immediately upon reading that, I thought, oh, if I'm going to create shows and get them out into the world, I need to constantly remember that selling is part of it, and there's nothing you can do about it.
And not only is selling a part of it, it's the ability to take the risk. Because if you go back to Walt Disney, he took incredible risks.
Absolutely. It's all about risk. Jerry Weintraub, who's got one of the greatest books I've ever read about show business. It's got a really long title. It's called something like it's called When I Stop Talking, You'll Know I'm Dead. And I was able to meet Jerry and work with him for a very short time. And he was amazing. He was absolutely amazing. And he talks about this, that you constantly have to sell no matter who you are. And you constantly have to bring joy to the sell. You constantly have to have a smile on your face. And and he says, look, most of show business, especially, is failure. It's constant failure. It's 99 point whatever percent failure.
Oh, sure.
So you got to keep going and keep at it every day with a smile on your face. You got to enjoy yourself wherever you can.
No, and again, there's implied risk no matter if you're pitching a television show or when I was a singer, when I would go for an audition, you're always, there's always inherent risk, and there's always a reward, though. Now, let's get to some of your shows.
One way to look at it, though, is almost like you just have to accept that it's risk. Just accept it. Like,
right.
So it's almost like there is no risk. You're going to fail every day, no matter what I'm pitching. We know we're going to fail. And every once in a while we don't, and then you should be pleasantly surprised.
So that's an excellent point. I really like that. I'm gonna frame that somewhere. So let's talk about your shows. What was the first show that you pitched that actually got nibbles and went on the air?
Well, the first show I ever created.
Yeah.
I was in college, and it was just they had a big old studio. I was at the American University. The reason I went to the American University in Washington, D.C. is because on the tour, at one point we were walking by and the tour guide said, "Oh, that's our TV studio." And we didn't even go in it on the tour. But I just looked at it and I was like, that is a big old building, with like satellites and wires coming out of it and a big tower and stuff. And so I said to my dad, we're going to go, after the tour's over, let's go wander over there. And we walked in, and it's this big giant studio with these really old cameras and some sets and some students shooting some stuff. And I went there, and junior year, I created what we called Midnight with Dave Noll. And it was a talk show. Kind of like a podcast of today, but there was like some comedy bits in it, or there was attempts at comedy because I had a bunch of kids that were funny around me. So they wrote stuff. And then we got the best interviews we could. And we were in Washington, D.C. So there was some celebrities there and obviously politicians, et cetera, journalists. So we got some named celebrities. And I did a whole bunch of episodes. I forget how many, but let's say 40 over the course of junior and senior year. We did it every week. And then my brother took it over. So he was 4 years younger. He went to the American University. And he was at least 10 times better than I was. So I was great. It was entertaining and interesting. His show was unbelievable.
Well, that brings up another point. Not to interrupt, but
yeah.
Everyone has a different type of skill. Like your partner Cleve does all this creative stuff, and you're sort of like you do a lot of the grunt work, pitch work, and knock on the doors work. And it's no different than when you were at American U. And you were like, you were germinating and making this happen, but your brother, who maybe had more on-air presence or whatever, was able to take it to yet another level. And I think an important thing everyone should know is everyone has particular things they're really, really good at, and they really have to exploit them in a positive way.
And I always talk about the Venn diagram of, what you really love. There's that circle. What you're really good at. Because as you were saying, it could be slightly different. And then what actually makes money. And if you can triangulate, triangulate.
Yeah, when you can put all those three things in the same spot.
If you can find something you love, something you're really good at, something that'll make money, and then you work hard for many years, that's a really great thing. And so what happened was, I then went to work at MTV Networks. I worked at MTV and VH1. And my brother, out of school, went to Hollywood. He did the thing where he just got on a plane, I think. I don't think it was a bus. I think it was a plane. And went to Hollywood and started out and immediately got some commercials. And we were able to sell that show to Comedy Central. We got a pilot. We eventually got 10 episodes. It was unbelievable. Unfortunately, it didn't last longer than 10 episodes. Most things in TV don't last longer than a season or two. But that kicked both of our careers to another level. I was able to say to myself, two kids from, Belvedere, New Jersey, Nowheresville, Jersey, were able to sell 10 episodes to Comedy Central. Maybe I can replicate that success again. And it has worked. I've now sold over 60 shows. Chris is an actor and a comedian and just extremely talented. And he plays the comic book shop owner on Young Sheldon, as well as been in a bunch of Netflix movies, as well as has a ton of commercials. He has done really, really well. And I've done so that one thing where we worked crazy hard and we managed to get the 10 episodes. Spun off into so many directions.
That's really cool. Now, we got to talk about Chopped because it's one of my favorite shows. And
thank you very much.
I really can't get enough of it. I sometimes try to replicate it in my kitchen, much to the chagrin of my family.
It is a miracle of a show. We're really absolutely.
I mean, it's really interesting in that because I was doing some background reading. It's a 4-3-2-1 principle involved, where it's it's an elimination show, and you're able to do it in a specified time frame, 46 minutes. When you figure out that that's the actual running time when you take out the commercials, and you're able to go ahead and get these people to cook from these disparate baskets as they are. And to go ahead and make 3 dishes that are, not going to kill anybody off. I mean, it's really, well, when you think about it, the number of, I don't know if you've done a calculation, but the number of actual dishes that have been presented to judges is easily in the thousands. And that's from the main show, not to mention all the spinoffs.
That's a really good point. The number of dishes, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, there's 9 per episode. And next year across the franchise, we're going to cross 1,000 episodes. So yes, at some point soon, we'll cross 10,000 dishes. That's insane. and that
And
would
when
mean
and that
40,000
maybe
ingredients in the baskets.
it's crazy. And then some of the ways it's spun off. You have the grill ones, and you have the Martha Stewart ones, and you have the Alton Brown ones, and those are good. But the original premise still holds. And how did I mean, how did that whole pitch process work with the folks at Food Network?
Well, we have these pitches all the time where you go to the network and you're pitching them a show. And Cleve and I, our focus is we would like to create television shows that last forever, honestly.
Of course.
Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy were both created by Merv Griffin. He's no longer with us, but his shows live on. And who knows how, like, Wheel of Fortune in particular, I feel like could last forever. All it is Hangman, but it's got this giant, colorful wheel. It's so addictive, so Pavlovian.
And it's so simple.
Puzzle, and so simple. You see that puzzle, you see the letters flip over, and you can't help but solve that puzzle. And so Cleve and I, that's our goal. Our goal is, what's the next Survivor? Wheel of Fortune, America's Got Talent, Shark Tank, Chopped, America Says, where this show could, in theory, last forever. And, we call them blue sky, big tent, 8 to 88 shows, meaning your 8-year-old kid could be in the room or your 88-year-old grandmother, and you're thrilled to be watching with either one of them. Anybody can play along. Anyone can enjoy it. And so for Chopped, the story about Chopped is, at that point we were working with a guy named Mike Krupat, who still creates shows to this day. He's based in Los Angeles. And he's just a great, very, very talented, hardworking human being, very creative human being. And we were working with him, and he knew I had a pitch coming up with Charles Norlander at the Food Network. Charles is this awesome character. I say he's kind of like a wizard. Whenever you talk to Charles, because he's crazy smart. He's very well put together, extremely impressive, extremely intimidating. And I said I had this pitch with Charles Norlander coming up, but I didn't have anything that I loved. And right. So Mike and I had been talking about this concept of a 4-3-2-1 that didn't exist before, and now people in television talk about it as it's a term of art. It's a type of show where there's 4 people at the start of the show and one gets eliminated at various times during the show, and then you're left with one winner. So Mike and I were talking about this 4-3-2-1 concept, and we at one point sold a show to MTV, which was called BFF at the time. And it was, a 16-year-old girl and her 4 friends. They all compete to prove who is her best friend. And the pilot was amazing. It was an amazing pilot filled with cattiness and gifts and tears and anger and laughter.
Oh, yeah, all the things that reality TV is known for.
It was so sad when they passed. So Mike said, well, like BFF, what if we do a 4-3-2-1 for Food Network? And I mean, to this day, and maybe I'm remembering it in more of a glossy way than it really happened, but I feel like in like 5 minutes between his excitement and my excitement at just those words, most of that show came to life in our heads, and we could both picture it. It was he was like 4-3-2-1, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're so smart. And then he said, what if it's appetizer, main course, dessert? And I was like, oh my God. 4, then it's appetizer down to 3, down main course, dessert, unbelievable. And I was like, how do we eliminate them? What happens? And then I pictured this silver dome, and I didn't know at the time it was called a cloche, but I remember in Bugs Bunny cartoons,
oh yeah,
restaurants, he would lift up that silver dome, and then some Elmer Fudd was under the dome or whatever. And so I said, well, what if at the end, right before the commercial break, he lifts it up and then you cut to commercial? And Mike was like, oh my gosh, and then I was like, oh, you've chopped. You've been chopped. So the whole thing, and we were, we're good friends to this day. The whole thing, that the essence of that show with 3 judges and a host and appetizer, main course, dessert, the whole thing came from that one phone call. And
That's
then
amazing.
I just kind of soared into Food Network because I thought, this is so good. And I literally said to Charles Norlander in that meeting, this could be your Jeopardy, those were the words that came out of my mouth. Because I said, this could lead into just about any show. So if you had this show.
Well, there've been so many permutations from it, because you have the holiday baking thing, you have the cookie thing, this thing, and that thing, yada yada yada, and on and on and on. So no, the Chopped phenomenon.
Before Chopped, really all they had was Iron Chef. So Iron Chef was on. That was just one competition for the hour,
and that was very campy. That was campy.
Exactly.
That was campy Godzilla, dubbing stuff. It was like, but it still was highly entertaining on a Saturday night. If I wasn't out, my wife and I would watch, and we'd be giggling because the dubbing was amazing and everything else.
But what's great is with Chopped, the competitions are so fast, right? Because there's 3 per hour. That, as I said, I went in and I said, look, this could be so entertaining that you could marathon this on a Saturday, 6 episodes in a row, and people would just watch. It's going to be that addictive. And he laughed, but to his credit, Norlander got it right away, very, very quickly. And that development process was 2 years. It was.
I know it takes a while. It's like birthing an elephant. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. But that said, Norlander championed that show the entire time. He saw the success in his head right from the beginning. And
it'll be 13 years coming up. So it's just, rock on,
13 years is unbelievable. It doesn't make any sense.
Now
I was 13 at the time, which is weird.
Well, it's an amazing thing. Obviously you didn't bring any child labor laws. It was beautiful. Anyways. And you must have graduated from American University when you were 3. So there you go.
Right around the same time. We're all very, very young.
All right. Now, I got to pivot to travel because it is a Walter's Wanderings travel podcast. And I know you had prepped me with a little phrase called a yacht in the south of France.
That's where everyone should be. At least a couple times a year. Everyone should be on a yacht in the south of France.
Well, you can pick me next time.
We worked for Barry Diller. For those of you who don't know, Barry Diller is a genius. He's an icon in television. He started Fox primetime. So he was the guy who greenlit The Simpsons and Married with Children and all of those shows at the beginning of Fox. And that's why, there still is a Fox network to this day because of Barry Diller. At one point, he ran Paramount Pictures. And it was during this insane run where it was Raiders of the Lost Ark and Beverly Hills Cop and all those. This guy's brilliant. So Cleve and I worked for Barry Diller for 4 years. And what he would do is there's this television festival in Cannes twice a year in the south of France. And he basically was like, look, I want you to try to sell these shows around the world. So I'm going to rent a yacht and you guys are going to go on that yacht and pitch whatever your new game show is or whatever your other show, whatever the new show is at 10, 10:30, 11, 11:30, 12, 12:30. Then you can get an hour for lunch. Then 2:30.
France, an hour for lunch. That's a tight fit.
It was exciting. And that was a huge, we learned, as you can imagine, we learned so much from that experience. And sold a ton of shows and had a ton of great times. I would highly encourage everyone to visit the south of France at some point in their lifetime.
Now, did you jump off the yacht into the Mediterranean like every good vacationer does, or not?
Yeah, apparently you're supposed to do that. I am not that cool, so no, I didn't. I'm just.
Well, I always have to ask. Listen, I'm particularly not try to say coordinated, so it would
you got to be careful.
That's it. Of course, always. Now, what about like traveling to do a pitch? If you're in New York now and you have to fly out to Los Angeles, what are some of the pitfalls or some amazing stories you might have? From traveling around doing pitches, or maybe an early morning pitch or anything like that.
We have traveled to pitch because, if you think about it, there's networks all over the world, right? So we've traveled to LA. There's there's networks that are based in Washington, D.C. We've gone to Toronto. We've gone to London, Spain, France, Germany. We've been basically all over. The craziest was Tokyo. We sold 2 shows into Japan. And that is just absolutely insane because you're flying seemingly forever.
Right, 12 hours. I've been there. I've done that.
Oh, there you go. So you've done that 12-hour flight. You fly.
I've done that 12-hour flight from Tokyo. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I am not good with that. I am a jet lagged person. Even just going to Los Angeles or London, I'm a mess for a number of days. So now we're flying to Tokyo, and I swear the whole thing just felt like a dream. Like I think back now, some things I actually have memories of that I feel like I wasn't even there, because you get off the plane, they take you to this. We were at apparently the nicest hotel in Tokyo in these amazing rooms. But then you had to get immediately into the car. So they were basically like, drop off your stuff. In 20 minutes, you're getting into this car to go to the network. And I think it was like 9 o'clock in the morning, but I was a mess. I hadn't slept on the plane. I was a complete mess. And then all of a sudden you're in this tiny room pitching to, say 12 executives. There's one interpreter. So you're essentially pitching to everyone, but you're talking to the interpreter because that's the only person who knows the language. And then they're asking you these questions. And as I say to you, the whole thing feels like this insane dream because your brain is just a complete mess. You haven't eaten, you're like grabbing like a candy bar or whatever, wherever you can. And there you are. And yet we were able to sell 2 shows that way. It doesn't make any sense. But it was, these are things. The great thing about TV is you have these amazing experiences and these memories, and you just every once in a while can bring them out and wow your children. That's the basic, there's someone's on TV and they say, oh, that guy's really cool. And you're like, oh, I hung out with him once.
Well, I'm always happy to hang out with you. We'll have to do that someday.
Whenever you wish, Scott. Whenever you wish.
If it looks. What is that? Is that Diet Soda or is that iced tea you have?
It is just a Diet Coke.
Diet Coke. Look, that's my drink of choice when I'm not drinking. So it's all good. But no, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and find out get some insight on some of the shows you've been a part of and some of the stories, because I think the storytelling part is sometimes even more important than the show. No offense to the show, because the shows are good and they're constantly on. You can find them anytime, and you can go to Discovery Plus and you can stream all the episodes and everything else. So it's just good stuff. And Winsanity, which I always liked, and America Says, we didn't even talk about that. Those are great shows, and then they're an awful lot of fun. And I appreciate having you on the podcast with me today. I really do.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
So, all right. Let me just update and recap. We had Dave Noll on today. If you talk about any of the shows he's been a part of, you can go, and even the Japanese ones. If you mention the Japanese ones, I'll give you a double. So I'll give you $100 off your vacation. If you mention a Japanese show by name, I'll get Dave to give me, make sure you're not making something up. And then if you just mention any of the other shows Dave's been a part of, $50 off your next vacation, 4 nights or longer, from Walter's Wanderings Travel. And this has been the Walter's Wanderings Travel podcast. Thank you, Dave Noll, for hanging around with me today. And we'll be back with another episode really, really soon.